Pokemon Sword and Shield came out November 15th, 2019, and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet released almost to the day 3 years later on November 18th, 2022. Was the wait worth it? Let's find out. I was more interested in Pokemon Violet, so that's what I picked up because I wanted to see all the future Pokemon. I mean, just look at this Iron Thorns. It's awesome. Little did I know this Pokemon would cause me an immense amount of pain, but we'll get to that later. Then me and another friend who also got Violet peer pressured Lucor into getting Scarlet. Thank you, we love you, buddy. Alright, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Performance and glitches. I was one of the lucky few that did not experience any of the major glitches. I personally never fell through the map. My character never got super big and lanky or anything, but I did experience a lot of frame drops, especially when playing in a rather populated area or when playing with friends. This was rather disappointing to me because even though I was kind of expecting it with all the rumors before the game came out, I was really hoping for a really smooth experience in an open world Pokemon game. It's also really disappointing because those first Pokemon games that came out on the Switch that no one likes to talk about nowadays ran rather smoothly and looked, in my opinion, absolutely beautiful. And even though they aren't open world games, they're much more traditional Pokemon games, I really would have preferred that Pokemon Scarlet and Violet ran like those games did. That being said, I'm not a developer, so I don't know exactly what goes into all of that. Game Freak and the Pokemon Company have said that they're going to keep putting out patches for the game and working on performance and fixing all the glitches and whatnot, but in my opinion, that probably should have happened before you put out the game. But there's already way too many videos on YouTube talking about the timeline in which these games are put out and how they need more developers for their games. Anyway, this isn't one of those videos, so back to the review. So this is the first Pokemon game that truly attempts to be a fully open world. The game has you go through and have 3 different storylines, and you can go anywhere in the map, allegedly. I say allegedly because even though the game is advertised saying you can do the gyms in any order, and you can take down the star bases in any order, and you can take on the Titans in any order, you can't really do that. The game doesn't scale at all to where your Pokemon are at, therefore even though you can go anywhere in the world, technically, odds are if you go out of order, you're going to run into things that are way too strong for your team to handle, and if you catch a Pokemon in the wild that's above what your current gym badge level is, it won't listen to you. If you hover over a gym on the map, it'll give you a hint along the lines of, this is the first gym that players typically take on, or this gym is harder, or this one is the hardest gym, whatever. It was a useful feature, but personally, I looked up a list that would tell me the different levels I could expect from each gym. After the first or second star base, I found that they weren't directly in my path, so I went through and did all of the gyms and then went back later to complete the star base challenges. And honestly, I was a fan of that because I didn't particularly like the star bases. I did like the Titan challenges in the game because it kind of brought me back to Pokemon Sun and Moon, which I literally bought a 3DS in high school to play when they came out. And that was also the first time that I'd ever played a Pokemon game right when it came out, so it was a nice bit of nostalgia for me. Scarlet and Violet also introduced a new auto battling or auto training feature, which I thought was pretty handy. Being able to just send out my Pokemon instead of having to enter a battle over and over and over again in order to grind out some levels was really nice. And of course, we got to talk about the gimmick for this generation, which is our Pokemon getting hats.
Many hats.
Honestly, it's a fine gimmick, I guess. It kind of feels like Gigantamax, where it's like, Megas are really cool and we're trying to make something new, but it doesn't quite live up to what the old ones used to be. And the final mechanic that I want to talk about before moving on to the story is the Legendary. Similar to Legends Arceus, you ride Pokemon throughout the game and they gain functionality as you go through the story. In Pokemon Violet, you're given Miraidon, and in Pokemon Scarlet, you're given Koraidon by Arven very early in the story. And even though they don't actually join your team until way later at the very end of the game, it does feel kind of cheap to be given the Legendary right as you start. That being said, by the time that I was able to actually add Miraidon to my party, I felt like I had a real connection after going through the entire game with him. This is also the first Pokemon game that I think I actually spent most of the time not just running around on my 2 feet and actually using the bike/Pokemon that was given to you in the game. So overall, I'm a fan of it, and I think that the Pokemon Company did a good job this generation. Okay, now let's talk about the story. I'm sure most people have already heard the story or have played the game at this point, so I'm not going to go into all the tiny little details, but I do want to talk about it overall. So the game starts out with you getting started at Yuva Academy, and then throughout the game you go through what is called your treasure hunt, which consists of the Gym Challenge, the Titans Challenge, and also the Star-based challenges. The Gym Challenge is similar to literally every single Pokemon game before it, where you battle the gym leaders, then you go on to take on the Elite Four, the champion, and rival battles are sprinkled all throughout the game. The Star bases are pretty similar, honestly. It just feels like it's another set of gyms. The only difference being you use auto battles for a majority of Pokemon. I think you have to beat 30 each time, and then you take on the leader. And the third story is taking on the Titans with Arven. And personally, I didn't button mash A throughout all the dialogue, unlike some people I know. You know who you are. And honestly, Arven's story with his dog resonated with me a lot because of my dog being 13 years old at this point. So I'm going through something similar with her getting older and having to put her on meds and everything. After the second or third Titan challenge, I honestly just wanted to go through the entire story and make sure that that dog was going to be okay in the end. And needless to say, I was very pleased when the dog was okay. Your rival throughout the game is a character called Nimona, and honestly, to me, she is one of the most annoying rivals I have ever experienced in a Pokemon game. I think this tweet from Lunar Live sums up Nimona's entire character without needing to go into any further explanation, honestly. Then towards the end of the story, you travel to what is called Area 0, which is where you find the professor, which felt kind of odd because you didn't actually meet the professor face to face until the very end of the game. That part felt kind of weird to me because I'm so used to a Pokemon game being you meet the professor at the beginning and that's how it goes. But this time around, you only get to see them on a screen. And then once you do meet the professor, you find out it's not even actually the professor because this is an AI, because the actual professor was, to be algorithm friendly here, unalived quite a while ago, protecting, in my case, Miraidon. Then you get a bunch of exposition about the time machine that needs to be shut down because in Pokemon Violet, a bunch of Pokemon from the future are coming back to your time, and we can't have that. And in the case of Pokemon Scarlet, there's a bunch of past Pokemon that are coming up to your time, and you can't have that. And then the professor goes crazy, and the AI tries to battle you to stop you from shutting down the time machine, which felt kind of odd. And then after you beat them, they just decide, you know what, I'm out of here, and they peace out through the time machine. And you don't see him again. And honestly, I did like the time travel stuff. I thought it was pretty cool to be able to see future Pokemon, my favorite so far being Iron Thorns. But the professor part of it felt really odd, and I wasn't that big of a fan of it. And I'm sure that we'll have DLC for this game. We'll have to pay another like $40 to get another part of the map or another set of Pokemon or whatever. And honestly, I'm hoping that they add in more future and past Pokemon because I think they're pretty cool. Overall, I think I would give the story of the game maybe like a 5 or 6. Wasn't that great, but it's a Pokemon game. I wasn't really expecting all that much as long as the gameplay and mechanics for the generation are good. And lastly, I just want to give my overall thoughts on the Pokemon of this generation. Overall, I thought the designs are pretty cool and the Pokemon in general are pretty cool. This is the first game that I've actually gone through and completed the entirety of the Pokedex because I wanted to get the shiny charm. And then we've got a couple different really cool Pokemon, in my opinion, 2 of which stood out were Finizen and Gimmighoul. Their evolutions are phenomenal, in my opinion, one of which looks like frickin' Cinnamon from the Apple Jacks commercials, which A+ in my book. I don't care if he's competitively viable. He's the Winamon. We also got a Pokemon that references Superman in its evolution, and that's one of my favorite comic book characters, so that's a win. And the last Pokemon that I want to specifically mention is the starter that I picked because I was someone who was stupid enough to choose Quaxly. Now, don't get me wrong, the duck is great, alright? The starter, phenomenal. I love Quaxly. He's got a nice little hairdo, can't complain. But when that thing is fully evolved, what in God's name were they thinking?
Do you think God stays in heaven because he too lives in fear of what he's created?
I just don't like how it shakes its hips at me every time I throw it out to have a simple Pokemon battle is all I'm saying. But yeah, other than that, Pokemon pretty good this generation, I have to say. So with all that being said, I think I'd give the game overall maybe like a 7 out of 10. I mean, it basically follows the Pokemon formula like we've been used to for so many generations now, with a couple extra storylines, adds a new gimmick, which again, we've gotten used to ever since Pokemon X and Y, but I had a good time playing it, and again, it's the first Pokemon game that I've gone through and completed the entire Pokedex. And overall, I would recommend it to someone who's a fan of the series and knows what to expect going into a Pokemon game, but it is a little harder to recommend to someone who is just starting out and maybe this is their first Pokemon game. Alright, ladies and gents, if you enjoyed, please remember to like the video, subscribe down below, maybe trying to do a lot more videos like this, and I'll see you guys next video. Peace!